So I'm going to, this video is to help with the biweekly payroll report. So the goal is to create an easy to read worksheet that summarizes the company's biweekly payroll. For each employee, the worksheet needs to have their name, their hire date, dependents, hours worked, hourly pay rate, gross pay, federal tax, state tax, net pay, and total tax percent. The worksheet should also include columns for each, total, average, high value, and low value for each. So what I'm going to do is take this raw data, and I can even actually start with it, and I'm going to make a new sheet. I'm just going to go ahead and paste that, and I'm going to make this a little bigger. And I'm going to take these and make them slightly bigger. And one thing you want to be careful with is each column should have, I don't need any columns in between. So as an example, let me just show you this. Here we have a bunch of different columns, right? But notice how there's all this extra column space. So I'm going to delete that, and instead I'm just going to make my one column bigger. I'm just showing this as an example so that here in our clean one you can see each column. You never want to have space between your columns. Okay, so let's go back to what we need. So we already have our hire date, dependents, hours worked, now the hourly pay rate. Now I need the gross pay. Well, in order to figure out the gross pay, I'm going to start a new column, gross pay. And the gross pay is actually calculated by doing gross pay is equal to hours worked times hourly pay rate. So that to me sounds like product, because again, I always want to use a function, and I know the function for multiplication is product. So gross pay is hours worked times hourly pay rate. So I select those two, and I'm going to make it money because it is a dollar sign. I'm going to drag that down. Next, I need to do federal tax, which is actually this formula. It is literally this formula, 0.22 times, in parentheses, gross pay minus dependents times 24.32. And instead of actually writing this, I'm going to use cell references. So I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to do federal tax. And I'm going to put this here as a reminder for me. And I'm just going to fix it up. So I know I need the equal sign so that Excel knows I'm ready to do a calculation. And instead of the times, I'm going to do an asterisk. And the gross pay, I'm going to select the cell that is the gross pay, which is this one. Minus, I'm going to select the cell that is dependents. And then I'm going to leave it times 24.32. And this follows order of operations, so Excel knows, just like please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, order of operations, that everything in the parentheses will get done first, and it will know to multiply first because that's the order. And I hit enter, and now I have the federal tax, and I'm going to drag that down. Next, I'm going to go back to my instructions, and I'm going to do state tax, which I know will be 0.04 times the gross pay. So I'm just going to copy that as a little cheat sheet. And, oops, I'm sorry, what was that? That was state tax, yep. So I'm going to go back, and I'm going to do state tax. And I'm just going to paste that to give me a little cheat sheet here. Equal sign, and I know I need to multiply it by gross pay. I'm going to multiply and then gross pay, and there's my state tax, and I can drag that down. Next is the net pay, which is gross pay minus federal tax plus state tax. So I'm going to use that, and then go in and put my cell references. So gross pay, and keep the minus, keep the parentheses, and then I'm going to put in my cell reference for federal tax plus my cell reference for state tax. Hit enter. There's my net pay. And then the last thing is tax percent. So that is federal tax plus state tax divided by gross pay. use my little cheat. I'm going to put the equal sign. I'm going to reference the cell that references federal tax plus state tax. I'm going to put in my cell reference divided by gross pay, which this is that cell and there. And because it's a percent tax, I'm going to go up into the number and I'm going to format it as a percentage, drag that down. Okay. Next in the instructions, it says I also need to compute totals for hours work, gross pay, net pay. Compute totals. Oh, I think I'll put the total here. So I'll say total, and then I'm going to use my auto sum, and now I have the sum of that, and I can just drag this across, make my life easy. This probably doesn't make sense because it doesn't make sense to add up all the taxes, so I'm going to delete that one. Okay, next it says average function to determine the average for dependents, hours worked, hourly pay, gross pay, federal tax, state tax, and net pay. So I'm basically doing the same thing except for average. Oh, and again, I didn't do hire date total because that just wouldn't give us any information, but average would. So now I'm going to hit the equal sign. I'm going to start typing average. I'm going to select the numbers I want to have averaged. So that's the average hire date, and I can drag that across. Now if you notice, it just formatted everything as a date because I copied that formula, right? The formula copied, but it also copies the formatting. So I'm going to go up and change it to general. And then I'm just going to copy that over. So now, in addition to the formula, which is the average function with that cell range, it has now changed it to the proper formatting as well. Then the next thing is max and min. So I'm going to go back to max and min. And again, I know that max I need for this cell range, equal sign max, for this cell range, and I'm just going to drag it across, and then I'm going to do the same thing for min. And drag it across. And then I'm going to go back and follow those formatting instructions.